Marina Bay hosted a Grand Prix that briefly ran in the 60s and 70s, but the Garden City re-entered the calendar for good in 2008. We missed it for a couple of years, but it was great to come back to the Singapore Grand Prix. And here's our track, 4.94 kilometres long, and overtaking chances into the first corner, into turn 14 at the end of the Esplanade, and now into turn 16 in the newly reprofiled sector that we first ran on in 2023. Still though, it's punishing and tough on the brakes, and the heat and humidity will take an effect on our drivers. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole. And starting next to them is George Russell. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Hamilton, Verstappen, Yuki Tsunoda, and Piastri, Antonelli, Norris, Sainz, and Alex Albon, Hadjar, Stroll, Liam Lawson, and Fernando Alonso, Bortoletto, Doohan, Nico Hülkenberg, and Pierre Gasly. Ocon and Ollie Behrman rounds off the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? And with me for this commentary this afternoon, former racing driver Naomi Schiff. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, every driver certainly has their own way of preparing themselves before a race. But I can tell you that pre-race rituals are a real thing. When I was in go-karting, I used to touch every wheel in a specific sequence before I got into the kart. And then I stepped up to cars and had a specific set of fireproof base layers just for race day. So watch the drivers when they're on the grid. Some may be sitting on the floor and isolating, others may be up to other things that they do. But these little things really help their minds get ready for the race.
Okay, radio check, radio check.
Radio check.
Now use DRS. DRS now available. You might experience some understeer now that you're in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as soon as possible. Fine job, that was the fastest lap of the race so far. Final lap, push, push.
Great job today, guys. Really well done to everyone. Also the pit crew. Great job. Let's keep this up.
Well done, Max.
And in the end, there was no Verstappen. Max Verstappen, he takes victory.
Wow, that race really kept us on our toes with the ever-changing weather conditions. It is so unpredictable when you're in the car, with visibility being limited to know exactly what's going on. So the driver really made some great calls in this situation.
From lights out to the checkered flag, this is what they're racing for. It's points and a trip to the podium. But there can only be one on the top step. Your number one, Max Verstappen.